Good morning, everyone. I'm very much happy to see you all. Time, time to time, some brothers and sisters they called me and said they miss the chapel a lot. So yesterday, there are some flowers bloom in front of our chapel, and each day that there we can see different types of flowers blooming, and we also have other flowers. So there are many types of flowers bloom here, and our the mountain right behind our church is changing every day. And when brothers and sisters in the morning, when there are not many people, they can come and take a look around and go back. So we had a wonderful time. So we miss people. You miss people too, right? I really missed you all. Although not all of you are here, but I'm very thankful that we're able to have this fellowship together. Let's open our Bible. Act chapter 4 from verse 1 to 22. From verse 1 to verse 22. If you are there, open your Bible to Acts chapter 4 from verse 1 to 22. And as they spake unto the people, and the priest and the captain of the temple and the Sadducees came upon him, being grieved that they taught the people and preached through Jesus the resurrection from the dead. And they laid hands on them and put them in hold unto the next day, for it was not eventide. Howbeit many of them which heard the word believed, and the number of the men was about 5,000. And it came to pass on the morrow that there were rulers and elders and the scribes, and Annas the high priest, and Caiaphas and John and Alexander, and as many as were of the kindred of the high priest, were gathered together at Jerusalem. And when they had set them in the midst, they asked, By what power or by what name have ye done this? Then Peter filled with the Holy Ghost, said unto them, Ye rulers of the people and elders of Israel, if we this day be examined of the good deed done to the impotent man, by what means is he made whole? Be it known unto you all, and to all the people of Israel, that by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom ye crucified, whom God raised from the dead, even by him does this man stand here before you whole. This is the stone which was set at note of you builders, which is become the head of the corner. Neither is there salvation in any others, for there is none other name under heaven given among the men, whereby we must be saved. Now, when we saw the boldness of Peter and John, and perceived that they were underlearned and ignorant men, they marveled, and they took knowledge of them, that they had been with Jesus. And beholding the man which was healed standing with them, they could say nothing against it. But when they had commanded them to go aside out of the council, they conferred among themselves, saying, What shall we do to these men? For that indeed a notable miracle hath been done by them in manifest to all that dwell in Jerusalem, and we cannot deny it. But that is spread no further among the people. Let us straightly threaten them, that they speak henceforth to no man in this name. And they called them and commanded them not to speak at all, nor teach in the name of Jesus. But Peter and John answered and said unto them, Whether it be right in the sight of God to hearken unto you more than unto God, judge ye. For we cannot but speak the things which we have seen and heard. So when they had further threatened them, they left God them go, finding nothing how they might punish them because of the people. For all men glorified God for the which was done. For the man was above 40 years old, on whom this miracle of healing was showed. When I first went to army, the first thing that I experienced was in the army. They have this. They give you certain articles and supplies, like the boots and underwears and uniforms. It was in the winter time, so they gave us a pair of gloves. It was a pair of gloves. But after sleeping, passing a night, and I kept my I kept my glove in my closet, but the following morning when I woke up, my glove, my pair of gloves were gone. And at the time, if you lose any supply that you get from the army, they would beat you up and say, "Where did you sell it?" So I was a little afraid to be punished. But because in the army, people they say they have no choice, so they would steal others and the gloves of your comrades. So in the night, as you maybe go for toilet and you come back, you can maybe just switch the gloves and not you cannot switch just with one person, but you switch with yours and you switch others as well, so that they may not doubt you. But that day, I made up my heart that maybe I'll have to also switch and steal my gloves. But Jesus gave me a heart in me that, but as you steal the gloves, maybe let's say you do not get caught, then that's okay. But just in case you get caught as you are stealing, would you be able to witness the gospel in the army? And I was a little scared when I heard that in my mind. After becoming the gospel preacher, being I've been through many difficulties in my life. But the reason why I could overcome these difficulties was because I preached the gospel. You know, when I preached the gospel, when I saw many people receiving salvation, it became so much joy in my heart. I was in Daegu, Padong, and there was a lady moved from Daejeon and was working in the bill making company. Somebody told me to visit her and preach the gospel for her. So I met her and I preached the gospel to her. She received salvation then. So in Gyeongsan, every week we had Bible studies. Every Thursday, I remember, because in the company where they make money, not any foreigner is allowed. So we went in. We could not go in, but we had the Bible studies outside of the building. And we had Bible studies there every time. It was distance where we could go like in 30 minutes, but we had to take lunch, and from Padong to Panortang, from Panortang we have to take an express bus. You have to go to Gangnam University, and you got down there. Maybe on foot you have to walk quite a long time to go inside. So we'll get there maybe around evening time, and in the night, people get together one by one. When there are many, there will be around 20. This Bible study that I had in a bill making company, it was so graceful. In the end, after when we finish, all the sisters they'll go back to their dormitory, and I will come back home on food. And I was taking going to the bus stop to go back to my house, and I had to go through the acacia, field. And even now, when I think about it, I feel like it was like dream to me. Today Soyoung received salvation. But next week maybe Okiwi will receive salvation. Yonga will also receive salvation. And whenever I remember the names of each sister in my mind, each one receiving salvation, that became so much joy in my heart. We took the bus. We came all the way down to Panol-dong. And the bus was sending out so much smoke. And there were so many people smoking so much in the bus, so you will have to dust your clothes your suit so that you will smell less. And when I go arrive at my house, I would find my wife holding Unsuk in her arms and dozing off in front of the gate. Whenever I see her dozing off, I thought to myself, would she know the joy that I have in me? When I first went to Apgokdong, when I preached the gospel to Sister Sonul Sun, and when she received salvation, I was happy. I was happier than anyone in the world. And the fact that one person received salvation became so much joy in my heart. In the army, they don't when you steal, they don't call this theft, but because even if you steal, it still remains in the Ministry of Defense of South Korea. So you call it replacement. They're just replaced in someone else's closet. So in the army, these people say that in the army you cannot do anything about it. You have to steal. You have no choice. But when I face this situation, as I steal it, I may not get caught. But in case I get caught, would you be able to preach the gospel in your, in your place where you sleep? The telecommunication military base. It was the second half of the year. They had 16 weeks of training. There were two schools. One was the telecommunication training center. The other one was officer training center. And once they finish each school, they get different rank. After 16 weeks of training, the training was so hard. So there were so many people running away. And to me, that 16 weeks, I was so happy. Every night, after I'll go to the empty room and I'll preach the gospel to people around me. So the moment I spent there I was so thankful about it. But if I steal gloves and if I get caught, for other comrades, when they steal, they would just they will smile and they would even boast about it that they stole and succeeded. But to me, I could not just steal and get caught because I was preaching the gospel. And that day, I thought about it. God, I thank you, Lord. I thank you that I did not steal today. God, please give me a pair of gloves. I pray to God. And the following day, we had a generate throwing testing, the training. And everyone else was wearing the gloves. So in the company was consisted of 200 soldiers and 129 people. As they were marching, they were waving, the blue hands because they put the gloves on. But as I was marching, only my hands were red because I didn't wear gloves. So as we're having the grenade throwing training, we had to pull out the security pin, and we had to throw it, and sometime during the war, people, they were so much in haste that they would forget to take out the safety pin and they would just throw it, and from the enemy's side they will pick the grenade, and they will hold it, and they will pull out the safety pin and they will throw it back. So that happened sometime during the war because they were so much in haste. But as I was during the training, there was one camera next to me, and he asked me, "Oksu Park, don't you have gloves? Don't you have gloves?" And he said, "Oh yes, I don't have. Actually, when I was sleeping last night, somebody stole it." And he said, "Oh, you should have told me earlier. I have 2 pairs of gloves." Hey, where did you steal it? No, I didn't steal. But how could you have 2 pairs of gloves? My brother is a captain of company, and because I have freeze bite, so he gave me another extra pair of gloves.
하나님,
Oh God, oh God.
나는 그날 밤에
That night I was about to steal a pair of
예수님이 내
gloves.
마음에 이야기하듯이
But as Jesus was talking to me in my heart, spoke to me in my heart. If you steal gloves, maybe you may not get caught,
그러나 만약에
possibly.
네가 장갑을
But in
훔쳐가지고
case you get
튀면
caught as you steal,
근데 3년 동안 네가
for
내무반에
two
할 수 있겠다.
for 3 years of your military service, would you be able to preach the gospel to anyone in your
들키고
room?
문제가 안 되는 들키고 전도 못 한다.
Getting caught is not an issue, but being unable to preach the gospel, that would be a big problem to me.
그게 막 그렇게 겁이 나는 거야.
So I was really scared about it.
예수님이 내 마음에
And Jesus in my heart, he had fellowship with me in my heart.
네가 장갑 훔치다가 안 들킬 수 있다.
You may possibly not get caught as you steal,
그러나 만약 장갑 훔쳤다
but in case you get caught,
내무반에서
you'll be unable to preach the gospel in your room. Because whenever you preach the gospel, they would be like, "You're a thief. How can you how can you talk about Jesus?"
저는 제가 그때
So that time,
예수 그런 마음을 주셨는데
God gave me that heart in me. And sometime
그렇게 하려고 했는데 주님이
I meant to do certain thing like
내
this,
마음에 그렇게 하지 마 이렇게 해라.
but Jesus would give me another heart to do differently,
굉장히 많이 켜.
so I could experience certain things like that many times.
이번에 원신 목사
This time, Pastor Yongshin Oh came.
주
Well, he didn't came, but we had the Bible seminar on Zoom
아내하고 저하고 집에서
with me and my wife with a big television in front of us.
제 아내 아예 책상 펴놓고
And my wife, she put like little table in front of her, and she was writing and listening to the Word of God. And she was so attentive. It was my first time seeing her that attentive.
제 아내 생전 처음으로
My wife, for the first time in her life, she told me that, "Oh, this is so graceful."
나한테 미안하다.
And she was sorry. It was my first time hearing things like that from my wife.
너무 좋아요. 원래
It was so nice.
근데
Actually, they were supposed to have the Bible seminar until Friday, but I called Pastor Yongshin Oh and said, "Oh, why don't we do it until Friday?" "Oh no, Pastor, you should do it." "No, I want you to do it." So we did it. We did it again.
진짜 이야기를 들어요.
The more I listened to his testimonies, it was really graceful.
송충환 형제 했고
Brother Pastor Song Chung-an did it, and Pastor Oh Young-shin did it. So next week, Pastor Young-guk Park will do it.
교회에서 목회 계속 할 수 있고
So I was wondering if I would be able to do the ministry in this church again,
너무 젊은 사람들이
because as young people,
너무 귀하고
they were so precious.
제가 들어봐.
Even in my ears, it was so graceful.
박영규 목사
Pastor Youngju Park, when he felt his ministry totally failed, he came back to Korea.
근데 박영규 목사 또 일하는 걸 보면
But when I see God working through Pastor Youngju Park,
구역장
he's responsible of the region. And Pastor Youngju Park, he helped us Yeoju Church to buy a chapel, and it was so graceful.
현재 교본선 선교회 가운데 분당 교회가 제일 사람들이 많이 늘어나요.
And among many churches in our goodness mission, it's Bundang Church where the numbers of the saints are growing
그 속에
unbelievably.
하나님을 보면
And also, when I see God working in the church in His heart, it was obvious this is not God. This is not man doing it, but it was God. Obviously, this was so precious
예수님께서
when I see God working there.
우리가 그 하나님의 성령의 인도를 받지 않으면
So without receiving the guidance of God,
전도를 하면
if we witness the gospel, we will become arrogant. Like, oh, I'm so good. They could easily be arrogant.
우리 교회 사역자들 가운데 가장 큰 병이
The biggest problem of the members of our pastors is the heart becoming arrogant.
마음이 높아지면
Because when they become arrogant, from then on, they will take everything lightly in their hearts, and they will do whatever they want to do.
그다 한 2, 3년 지나서 서서히 거만해지고
And 1 or 2 years later, they'll become arrogant and they'll stop witnessing the gospel and they'll go corrupted.
그런 전도자들이 참 많아.
But there are many pastors like that.
구원을 받았는데
Although they are saved,
좋았는데
they were good right after salvation. But when they become arrogant, they would be unable to listen to the voice of Jesus talking to them in their hearts.
최근에 저희 선교회 안에는
Recently, in our mission,
이번도 유럽에 어제 그렇게
even yesterday for 2 days,
유럽에
we organized CLF, Europe CLF online, and I preached for 4 hours.
유럽에 하나님의 은혜로
By the grace of God, Pastor Oyongdo,
영국 런던의 기독교 지도자
he became the chairman of the Christian community in Yeongguk, in England, in United Kingdoms.
당신 하세요.
And he said in the beginning he refused. No, I'm not good. I can't do it. I'm not good at English. And the people say, no, you are good. You are not as spiritual as you are. So in the Christian community in England, he became the chairman of the Christian community in. And when I heard that news, I was very. Although I shouldn't be laughing at it, but I could smile. And that way they invited all the pastors.
제가 금요일 날 2시간
So Friday 2 hours, Saturday 2 hours. I preached for a total of 4 hours. And God opened the heart of each and every one of them.
이스라엘 목사님도 와서
Some pastors from Israel came, and he heard the word through Zoom, and he changed. So I was so thankful. So next week we're going to invite Pastor Yeongguk Park for the Bible seminar again.
주 예수 내 마음에 들어와 계신 후 변하여 새 사람 되고
So ever since Jesus came into our heart, we became new person, and we can see how God is working in our lives.
예수님이 내 안에 와서
So ever since God came into our hearts, I can see how He's working for us, and this is so graceful and thankful.
우리 구원을 받고 나면
And when we receive salvation,
우리 마음속에 어떤 현상이 일어나느냐?
the phenomenon that happens, what happens in our heart is,
우리 구원받기 다 전에 다 죄인이라고 말을.
before our salvation, we were all sinners. Yeah, we were all sinners.
저도 뭐
And even myself,
구원받기는 거짓말.
for my salvation, whenever I opened my mouth, all that I did was lying and telling lies, and I stole many times.
진짜
So I was such an evil person.
근데 찬송에 주
But
예수 내 마음에 들어와
there's a hymn saying, when Jesus came into my heart,
변하여
I changed
새 사람.
and became a new person.
히브리 10장 16절에
Hebrews 10 verse 16. It says, I put my law in their inward parts, and I write it in their hearts. So Jesus came into my heart. Yeah, sometimes He had fellowship with me in my heart,
그건 나도 모르겠어요. 내 마음 그런 생각이 일어나요.
and it will give me this kind of thought. I have to steal the gloves. I have no choice. So I'll think like that. So tonight I'm gonna steal.
근데 예수님이 내 마음을
But Jesus will come to me and say, He'll give me a new heart, saying,
네가 장갑을 잘 훔치면 안 들키고
if you steal where you may not get caught, that's possible. But
만일에 네가
in case,
장갑을 훔치다가
as you
들키고
steal, if you get caught,
내 말 전도 어떻게 할래?
would you be able to preach the gospel in your in the room?
장갑 훔쳐 들키면
If you get caught,
나이롱이야.
people will be like, Pastor Joseph Park is such a liar. You talk about Jesus superficially, but he tells lie. He does bad things behind our backs.
무슨 전도 하나?
If I open my mouth to talk about God, they will be like, you're a thief. How could you preach the gospel? How could you preach the word like that? They will be like that.
그래서 가장 행복했던 게
The happiest moment in my life
통신
when I was in army was when I went to the telecommunication training center. There was no military pastor, there was no military chaplain, and there was no chapel there. And I was the 11th class of ROC, But until 310th class of ROC, they were in Daejeon. From the 311th class, they moved to Wonju. So I was the first actually class of ROC in our army base. So for the 16 weeks, apart from the 16 weeks that I spent in training center, other than that period, I was the elder senior because anyone that comes in, they became my junior.
선배 앞에 거 먹었지만 선배보다 화장실 먼저 가면 지 공뒤로 잠못
So,
자고.
so there are many laws like if you sleep before others, you cannot sleep.
후배들 매주 토요일 오는데
So brothers and sisters,
한주 일찍 오네.
they'll all be there,
잠좀 잤습니까? 잘 잤습니다.
and they'll tell me, "Oh, did you sleep well last night?" I'll be like, "Yes, I slept well."
그래 그들에게 너무 긴장하지 마라.
So I told them not to be like worried because the time will flow anyway. So feel at ease. I told them.
가라앉지.
So I told them to say,
그럼 하나님께 교회 나온 손들은 거의 85% 손들.
and about 15 of them would raise up their hands if they go to church.
교회가 제일 컸어.
Actually, our church was the biggest church in the military base
오늘 37명.
because in a headquarter, about 40 people came for the service, but in my base, about 150 people they came for the service.
예배를 마치고
After the worship,
한 20여 명이 항상
about if I ask for individual fellowship, about 21 of them they raised up their hands for individual fellowship.
병사 돌려보내라 하고
So I asked Song Chung-won, Kim Chang-young to send back other soldiers, and to 21 of them I would preach the gospel to them,
행복해요.
and I was so happy. I was so happy to be able to live like that.
내가 내 생각을 따라 걸어갔는데
I followed my thoughts,
한 번씩 주님은
but sometimes God will tell me,
너 장갑 훔치다가
God will speak to me, would you not get caught if you steal?
만일 네가 장갑 훔쳐 들
If you get caught when you steal,
내가 와서 어떻게 전도하라.
how would you be able to preach the gospel in your army base?
깜짝 놀랐어요.
I was so surprised.
전 그렇게 생각 안 했는데
I never thought like that.
내 만에 전도 안 하면 내가 무슨 재미로 살아요.
If I don't preach the gospel, what kind of joy do I have in my life?
저녁에 전화 맞춰
In the middle of the night,
누구 데려와 데려와
they'll be like, "Oh, tonight you bring me someone. Okay, I'll preach the gospel to that person.
그러니까 디디 좀 해줘.
Okay, I'll do this and you do that. Okay."
전 군대 가서 돈을 안 가져갔는데
When I was in army base, I had no money,
빵 먹었어.
but every night I went to train bread.
송순정이 이제 날 보고 밥 먹사.
And brother Song Sun Jung, he will be like,
내놔.
Pastor Oxupa, you have to pay for the bread. What kind of bread are you talking about?
내가 빵 다.
When you're in the army base, I was the one who bought the bread every time.
빵 먹.
That's when I realized that I had no money in me, but I always ate the bread. It's true, it was you who bought the bread for me. I'll give you the money later, okay?
이자 치서.
I'll give you the interest, and before my death, you can take the money. I told him.
예수님이 내가 눈으로
Jesus,
손으로 만질 수 없지만
I cannot see, I cannot touch him with my hands. That didn't happen before, but
어떤 일을 하려고 할 때
when I do certain thing in my life, I could see God working like that.
옛날 중국의 깊은 산속에 숲을 뿜는 젊은 부부가 있었어요.
A long time ago in China, there was a couple who was making charcoals, and one day they lost their way, so they slept in they spent 3 days in their house,
젊은 부부에게
and so they preached the gospel to this young couple who were making charcoals,
그들은
and from that day on, every day they preached the gospel and they believed in Jesus.
굉장히 날씨가
And one night it was very cold,
추울엔 너무 춥.
because in China it's very cold depending on the region. So they have to in the morning they had to take a cup of beer, a cup of liquor to warm up their body.
오늘 추우니까
So one day it was very cold, so as usual, they prepared a cup of liquor on their breakfast table and they prayed to God. God, we thank you for this meal.
가면 기도하고 밥을
But as they were praying, they were about to scoop the rice and eat. They didn't know why, but
예수님이 좀
they felt uncomfortable in their heart, and they thought maybe Jesus is feeling uncomfortable. Do you feel that? Yeah, I feel that too.
어제 우리 뭐 잘못하면
Did we do anything wrong yesterday? Why do we feel like this? Did you do anything to, disappoint Jesus?
달라진 게 없느냐?
Well, nothing changed.
술 이거
Oh, yes, this liquor.
내놓고 기도해 보자.
Let's put it down and pray again.
그냥 기도가 잘 돼.
And when they prayed, their prayer went well, so they stopped drinking from that day
그다음에
on.
술잔을 식탁에 놓으면
So if they put that liquor up on the table, they felt uncomfortable again. So from that day on, they stopped drinking.
술 끊는 내외가
So this couple making charcoal, they came to downtown,
교회를 찾아 목사님
and they visited their pastors and they preached to they met the pastor and asked them, Pastor, they said,
그 생각이 나서
they remember their story
술 마시고
and they asked, Pastor, what happens to those who believe in Christ? Is it okay if they drink?
기쁜 삶
And
속에서
pastor said-
술안 마시면 못 사는데 술 마시면 안 된다 그러면 시험 들 것 같아. 그냥
And pastor, when he asked him, pastor said, it's okay to drink. He told them that it's okay because he thought that if they tell them not to drink, although they're living in the deep mountain, they thought they were going to fall into temptation. So they told them it's okay to drink. So the brother thought about it and he asked the pastor, Pastor, do you drink? And the pastor told him, I don't drink. Ah, I see why.
내가 예수를 믿은 뒤에
After believing in Jesus,
목이 하나 들어와요.
I have this boss in my heart, you know.
술을 마시려고 할 때마다
And each time I try to drink,
안 좋아하는 것 같아.
this, boss in me, he does not feel comfortable. So since that day, I stopped drinking.
근데 지금 목사님 술 안 마시면 이게 옳다고.
And now I see why I felt like that.
근데 술을 마셔야 하는지 잘 모르지만 우리 안에는 예수님이 성령이 우리 이끌어 가시.
So this Holy Spirit was guiding us after our salvation. As I said earlier,
예수님을 믿냐.
when Peter denied Jesus,
예수님 부활하신 뒤에
after Jesus resurrecting, he could not look at Jesus.
제가 예수님
Jesus,
부인했습니다.
I denied you, so please forgive me.
하려고 하는데
He was gonna say that, but as he was praying, Jesus was gone. So he was feeling uncomfortable in his heart.
인간이 무슨
A person like me, what kind of apostle am I? I'm not. I denied Jesus 3 times. I'm not an apostle. I'm just a simple fisherman.
그래서 아무리 생각해도
So no matter how he think about it,
세 번이나 부인하고 난 뒤에 자기가
after denying Jesus so many times like that,
하나님 못
he could not do the work of Jesus, witnessing the gospel. So he suffered in his heart.
물고기나 잡으러 가야 돼.
So he said to himself, I can't do anything. I'll just go fish as usual. So he went to fish, but he could not catch a single fish. In the morning, Jesus came near him and asked him if he had caught any fish. He said no, and Jesus let him cast his net on his right side, and they caught many fishes. And Jesus prepared the bonfire, and they were having meal together.
식사한 뒤에
And after having their meal, Jesus said to Peter, Peter, son of Simon,
네가 이 모든 사람을
do you love me more than any others?
베드로 마음속에 예수님을
In the heart of Peter, he had the heart to love Jesus.
예, 내가 주를 사는 주께서 아시.
Yes, you know that I love you, Lord.
내 양.
You feed my sheep.
베드로에게는 예수님을 사랑하는 마음도
In the heart of
있고,
Peter, he had heart to love Jesus.
부인한 마음도 있었어.
He also had heart to deny Jesus.
부인한 그 마음은 네가 예수님 부인했으니까 네가 무슨 하나님의 예수의 제자야.
I deny Jesus. What kind of disciple am I? I'm not a disciple of Jesus. That there's no that kind of disciple here.
그 마음을 막 불어일으키고
So when this heart was stirred up,
너무 고통스럽게
he really suffered in his heart. Oh yes, I'm not his disciple. I deny Jesus. I'm a fisherman. I can't do anything about it.
예수님께서 베드로 마음에 예수님
But in the heart of Peter, he had the heart to deny Jesus, but he also had a heart to love Jesus.
예수님 베드로에게 요한의 시몬아 네가 이
So he asked Peter, John, son of Simon, do you love me more than anyone else?
자기는 예수님 부인한 건 마음에 꽉 차 있었는데 자기 생각은 예수님 사랑하는
So
마음이
Peter's heart
있는
was filled
거예요.
up with this heart of denial, but he could also find love in his
이
heart.
모든 사람은 나를 더
Do you love
사랑하느냐?
me more than any one of
예,
these?
내가 주를
Yes, Lord. You know that I
사랑하시나이다.
love you.
아, 내가 주님을 사랑하고
Ah, yes, I
있네.
love Jesus.
사랑하고 있네.
Ah, yes, I love
예수님을.
Jesus. I love Jesus.
내 양을 보지라.
Ah, feed my sheep. Feed my sheep.
내 어린 양을.
Feed my lambs.
그 예수님이 베드로하고
You know, that Jesus, he had fellowship, and through the fellowship that he had with Jesus, Peter could change his heart totally.
그래, 내가 연세번
Yes,
부인한 거
it's true, I denied Jesus. It's true that I denied Jesus, but that was not my real heart. I denied him because I denied him out of my fear. That was not my real heart. And even that sin, God washed it on the cross.
사랑하는 마음이 나도 복음을 일해야지.
So I want to work for God.
그러면서 그때
So that moment, Peter regretted and he wanted to leave catching fishes, but he changed up his heart and he went to pray and he also accepted the heart of Jesus and he began to work as an apostle. So the following day he went up to the temple, he met the lame man sitting at the gate of the temple, and he said to the man and he preached the word to them, and why do you see me as if it's me who did it? Why do you look at me as if it's me who did it? Peter, he preached the gospel. So even that day, 5,000 people received salvation, and they got caught, and they went to the jail. The following day, the high priest, all the high priests, they got together. Before then, she lied because of the little maid. But then the high priest asked him, "Why did you teach? With what power? Why did you talk about him?" And they said, "In the name of Jesus that you killed, this man was healed." He said boldly. That day, 5,000 people received salvation that day. And although before then they couldn't say anything and they told lies, but that day they could boldly speak. And they said, "We cannot stop saying what we heard, what we saw. You know, who is right? We witness what we saw in front of God." So these people, they couldn't do anything about it. So Peter, who did this precious work, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. What kind of disciple am I? I'm just a fisherman. I will just go fish. You know, they were just doing like that. But in our heart, Jesus is alive. So this couple who were making charcoals in the deep mountain, when they heard after hearing the gospel, when they went to see the pastor in the downtown, you see, gave it their testimony saying, "The day I accepted Jesus, I have this buzz in me now, and each time I want to drink, this buzz gave me the uncomfortable heart, so I stopped drinking." So he gave him that testimony. So they're preaching. So this couple were living deep in the mountain. They had boss in them, just like that. In our hearts, we have this boss named Jesus working in us. So I put my law in their inward parts and I'll write it in their minds. In 1968, after finishing the army, I went to Kimcheon to preach the gospel. One day, I got 3,500 won in my hand. Holding 3,500 won in my hand, I took train. I didn't even take a drink. I didn't even take any beverage. Holding that money, because I just got out from the army. I didn't know how much value that really had, and I went to rent a room with the 3,500 won in my hand. And that day I went to Kimcheon to find a room, and I
7만 원을 달래.
and I asked for the price, and they said it was a 70,000 won,
밖에 안 썼어요.
and it was 1/20th of the money that I was supposed to have. 3,500 won was 1/20th
그래서
of the money that I needed.
너무 감사한 것은
But I was thankful because
한 번도 주님이 우리에게 집어 주신다는 것을
I never doubted that Jesus would not give me the house.
돈 없으면서도 매일
Although I had no money, each time I had time, I went to Kimcheon, and I was looking for a good house,
보고 있다가 이제 집에
and I was looking for a good house.
앤더슨
And one day in the bus, I encountered the person called John Anderson.
교사님이
John Anderson, he sat right next to me,
영어 실력 한국어 실력인데 영어 실력
and his English ability and my English ability, they were pretty much the same. So we talked to one another, and I asked him, what are you? What do you do? And he said he was a missionary. He was about 20 years older.
그 다음에 이제 본론 좋지 뭐 어디 가느냐 여행을 가신대.
So where are you going? I asked him. He said he was on journey. So he said, are you on a mission journey or something? He said no. He was just traveling. And when I heard that, I couldn't stand it.
복음자 돈이 없었을 적에는
You know, we are preaching the gospel. We have no money, so we are waiting. We are praying. But you have money. You get the support from your your country, and you're just traveling around. You are so much rotten. You.
김천도 거창 갈 때까지
From Kimcheon to Gachang all the way down, I shouted at him, how rotten you are. You can't be. He was 20 years older than me though.
당장 영국에 돌아가라고.
You go back to England as soon as possible. You don't need a person like you. I shouted and shouted at him. But you know what? The English people, they really are, gentlemen. If he tells me, I don't want to go. What can you do about it? Then I can tell him anything. Then he heard me shouting the whole time, and we were going to Gochang to take the bus, and he followed me and said, "Mr. Park, can I spend the night with you today?" Oh yeah, I don't mind. And he followed me to the mountain.
그 당시에는 좀 샘도 없고 우물이 없어.
But we had no, we had no tap water. We had just had brick right in front of us. We drank it. But back then, my thoughts were really short, so
끓여주면 된다.
I can boil the water and give him the water. But I just gave him the brook water.
아무렇지 않는다.
But when I drink the brook water, it didn't matter to me. But when he drank the brook water, he had diarrhea the whole time,
누워서 일어나지 못.
and he stayed lying for 4 days.
4일 만에
After 4 days, he stood back up and said, now I want to go.
다시 한마디 하고 싶은 이야기.
He said before he goes, he said he wanted to say something. I told him, go ahead and say.
그분이 나한테는 나
He told me,
지금까지 많은 목사.
until now I've met many pastors,
근데 당신처럼 사는
but I've not seen anyone that lives like you.
내가 사는 게 없어.
How do I live?
당신 사는 삶을
Yeah, I want to learn the life that you are living.
1년만 당신하고 같이 살고.
Let me just pass just 1 year with you, he asked me. And I smiled.
우리 사는 게 이거 어떤 건데?
We are not living any special way. We are just living like this. No.
나 당신에게 1년만 같이 해달라.
Let me just pass 1 year with you.
생전에 나 그런 거 처음 봤어요.
It was my first time hearing that kind of thing. And I told him,
당신은 성교비 오는 거.
do you get any support? He said, yes, every time. I have a problem with you.
나는 성교비.
There's no one giving me any money. But I live by faith.
미안해, 우리 자주 굶는다.
I'm sorry, but we starve many times.
근데 내가 당시에 빵이 장떡 있는데 난 빵.
But if you have bread, if I have no bread, and if I starve, you may try to give me the bread.
하나님만 바라보고 당신 바라보고 그거 안 돼.
Then I'm afraid that I may not look upon God, but I may look upon you.
그분이 저를
And you looked at me and said, well, so what should I do?
우리 이렇게 하자.
Okay, let's do this.
우리 집에 빵 썩어 나와.
even if you have like lots of bread, if even if they're rotting in your house, don't try to give them to me.
돈 주지 말고
Okay, don't give me even if they're rotting in my house. Okay,
받고 하지 말고
don't
그런
exchange any.
한다면
You just live with yours. I just live with mine.
괜찮겠다.
If you are okay with that, then it's okay. Oh, that's easy, he said.
김천 집어도 오라고.
And I told him to find a house in Kimcheon and come.
한 일주일이 다시 왔어.
About a week later, he came
미스터
and he said, Mr. Park, I prayed to God,
김천 집어들 돈
and God gave me $500 to find a house in Kimcheon. God gave me the money, and with that money, we could find the best house in Kimcheon. And I was little upset. Oh God, you listen to his prayer so well like that, but you listen to my prayer. So with that money, we could find our house. We could even find a car. We couldn't even have a car.
늘 주님이 이래라 제가 밥 먹으라 숟가락 놔라 들어라 그렇게 하지 마.
God doesn't. God is not like you do this, you do that.
걸어갈 때마다
But each time I go and walk, God will tell me, "Oh, this is not good."
너 장갑은 안 들킬 수 있지만
You may not get caught as you steal,
들키면
but in case you get caught,
어떻게 내 와서 전도하냐.
well, how would you be able to preach the gospel in your room?
나는 그냥 장갑 훔치고 안 훔치고 그게 딱 마음에 있었는데.
You know, my heart was just in that. Oh, whether I steal it or not. But when I heard him, if I get caught then I wouldn't be able to preach the gospel. So I was so much afraid. So I couldn't steal anymore.
내 법을 제 마음에 두고 제 생각에
I'll put my laws in their inward parts and I'll write it in their hearts.
원신 목사가
Pastor Oh Young-shin Oh, this time, when he was in LA,
나를 너무 화나게 했어.
he made me so mad.
집에 도둑이 들어왔어요.
You know, the three thieves came to his house
따라갔어요.
and he followed them.
따라가 그 중에 다
He followed
도망가서
them
잡아가지고
and he caught one of the three.
얼마나 두드려 팼는지
He beat him so bad that
도둑이 경찰에 고발을 했어요.
the thief sued him.
미국에는 총을 쏘아도
You know,
앞을 보고 쏠 때는
you know, in the United States, if you shoot someone in front, then it's okay. But if you shoot them on their back, then that's a problem because he was running away. If you shoot them, that's a problem.
내 총을 가지고 우리가 돌아가고 쏘면
If the thieves come to your house and you shoot them in front, then that's okay. But you shoot them on their back when they're running away, then that is a problem. But he pursued the one who were running away, and
고발을 했어요.
the thief, he was so angry and he sued him.
내가 그랬습니다. 담임 목사 절대 변호사 믿지 마라.
And I told him, okay, don't give him any money to find a lawyer, but just let him deal with it. And I was really angry with him.
이번에 미국 들어가다 못 들어갔을 거예요.
And because of that, when he wanted to go to the United States, he couldn't go this time because he had bad records. And he knew some time before being able to go there. So he had many problems, you know. Would he be able to be a good minister? No.
그래 제가 월드 캠프를 마치고
And after the World Camp,
미국 가면 사이전 다전해가지고
you know, when I went to the States, you know, our pastors and missionaries in the United States became all like they all lost their senses. And I told them, okay, I invented a new program. If you want to apply for it, you raise up your hand. And okay, only 10 people can apply for this program. Nobody raised up their hands.
나도 그냥 앉아 기다려.
So I was just waiting, sitting there. Whether it's 10 hours, 20 hours, I just waited. One of them raised up his hands. 2 person raised up his hands. 5 people raised up their hands, and 10 people raised up their hands. And I just took 500 of them. The program that I made was
10명이
500 of them.
그레이 하운드 티켓 2장을 샀어요.
I let them buy 2 tickets of Greyhounds. I let them go to the places where they never have been.
한 달 동안 와라
and spend 1 month there.
마음대로 해.
Whether you play there, no matter what you do, you spend 1 month there. But don't take any money with you.
그리고 제가 한국에 왔어요.
And I came back to Korea.
그 다음 차 집에 가서 10명이 한 달 동안 다른 도시에서 돈 한 푼 안 사고
So they spent 1 month in different city without any money.
얼마나 축복을
But when they came back, they were so happy.
기쁨에 가득 차 있어.
They were filled up with this joy in their hearts.
하여튼 10명이 간증하느라 우리 그 집회 시간 말씀 시간 외에는 단 얘기할 시간이 없어요.
So they were giving their testimonies and they shared their testimony on and on and on.
10명이 전부 다 전화로
They shared their testimonies.
어젯밤 어느 밤 어디서 잤냐고 뭐
And I would call them each time they were away. Where did you sleep last night? How did you do?
정확하게 그들의 삶을 이끄는
And God was clearly leading their lives.
원신 형제가
But 오영신,
하와이 있었는데
he was in Hawaii.
생일에 안 가본 도시를 가는 하와이는 뭐 빤하잖아 조그만해서
Hawaii is not a big place. It is a small place. So he went to a different city, different islands.
하고 그 사모
So 오영신 and his wife.
딸만 셋이
He has 3 daughters, 7 years, 5 years old, 3 years old.
아무도 딸을 맡겨줄 사람은 딸을 데리고
No one could take care of him, so they went there with their daughter.
첫날 저에 잠잘 데가 없어가지고
They had nowhere to sleep the first night.
어느 그 마켓에 가니 큰
They went to a market
마켓에 갔는데 그 아울렛 한다고 뭐 밖에다 뭐
and they left some stuff outside because they want to do the outlet. And that they kept their bags there and they went to sleep there inside.
근데 저 경비가
But the guard, he was looking at them from far.
그래 하나 들어오니까
And when they got in one by one, he came by and said, "What are you gonna do here? You cannot sleep here. You have to get out.
줘라
Can't you let us sleep?
된다
No, you can't.
경비 책임 이거다
I'm a guard here. This is my work. This is my work."
퇴근하다가 그걸 보고 왜 그러냐
And
이 사람 여기서 잠자려고 한다
some workers they were going back home and they saw them arguing. So he came near and said, what are you doing here?" And told them, "Oh, I came for mission journey. I have nowhere to sleep. So I'm just gonna spend the night here. I will not cause any harm." When the worker heard him saying that, he said, "Oh, you're on mission journey? Well, I have many rooms in my house.
그 집 와서 언제 잠 어떻게
Why don't you sleep in my place today?"
고맙다
"Oh, that's great."
그날 그 직원 집에 가서 저녁 잘 얻어먹고
So they had good meal that day in the worker's house, and they slept there that day.
한 달 동안 하루 지나다 보니까
So as they spend time there,
내가 악하구나
so 오영신 could see that, oh, I'm so evil. I'm so evil.
우리 세 딸들은
My three daughters,
미련한 나를 믿으면서
they trust in me who am so foolish, but they are never worried. They play so well.
같이 놀고 뭐 이야기하고 술처럼 놀다가
They play
막 나오고 그러는데
they play well.
저 못난 나를 믿고 딸들은 저렇게 평안해하는데
So with my daughters, they're looking at me, but they feel so comfortable. But me, I'm waiting upon this Almighty God. But why am I not like peaceful in my heart? That always gives me the place to sleep. But all day long, I'll be worried about where to sleep and what to eat. So from that day on, he could see that he had no faith in Almighty God, so he could believe in God one by one. And he relied on God.
근데 영장 하나님 의지하면서
But as he relied on God,
독일에서 7층짜리 빌딩을 샀어요. 7층짜리.
in Germany, they bought a 7 stories building
프랑크푸르트
in Frankfurt downtown.
그 시내 막 중심부는 아니지만
It's not like in the center of the downtown, but
시내 그 집 사는데 쓰나미 나 독일에 살만한데 왔다 보려고 1억을 딱 헌금을 하는 거예요.
and his younger brother,
뭐 거의 돈
his brother-in-law like gave the offering of 10 million, 100,000, $100,000.
독일에 뭐 이자 굉장히 한국에 이자가
Actually, in Germany, the interest is very expensive.
이자를 받아야죠.
So
너저 뭐야
our
다
mission
내가 갖고 보냈는데
paid them the little bit of money for them.
사오니까 잘 기억이 안 나는데 선교에 제일 많은 돈을 해가지고
So we sponsored about $300,000. I don't remember if it was $400,000 for the building.
그걸 가지고 이제 우리 저 뭐야 선교에서 그 리모델링 잘하는 장로님 많았어요.
And there's a brother in our mission who's really good at remodeling the building.
거의 많았는데
So he do the work of the church.
케냐 예배당 이번 새로 짓냐 리모델링 너무 멋있게 내자는데 그냥
He was so good at doing the work there.
원래 다 수리하라 그래. 그거 지금 수리하고 있어.
He's also
한다고 막
he's also constructing the building in Zambia.
너무 아름답게 꾸며.
So they decorated the building, their chapel so nice.
그렇게 잘할 수가 없어.
They did the interior so well.
진짜 태국의 예배당
Even their chapel in Thailand is so well done. It's like a hotel.
원신 목사가
Pastor Oh Young-shin,
하고 나니까
when he experienced God once,
어제 저녁에 저뭐 하와이에서 저뭐 LA 가는 비행기 탄 이야기 하지.
yesterday he talked about how he was able to travel to Hawaii.
1,000불씩 하는데 이런.
He had to pay about $1,000 for each person, but he was traveling 3,000 with his husband and his daughter, but he only paid $140.
하나님을 믿는 믿음이 있고
So when he had his faith in God,
하나님 이영재 앞길을 쭉 이끄니까
you can see how God is leading his path.
우리 선교 제일 선교한데 유럽인데
The hardest place to do ministry in our mission was Europe.
어제 그저께 이틀 동안에
But
유럽에
yesterday and the day before yesterday, we did all the mission work in Europe.
크리스마스 칸타타 립싱크로 한번 해라 했는데
And I told him to do the Christmas cantata in lip sync, and he said it's impossible to do it there in Europe. But they tried it, but it worked out really well.
이제 뭐 가짜 마이크도 하나 붙여놨는데
They put fake microphone,
자세히 보더니
and people they looked at it and said, "Oh, this looks like lip syncing, but this is not. They're not lip syncing, but this is real."
그걸 얼마나 웃었는지
They
모르겠어.
said he laughed a lot inside.
감동하는 그렇게 노래를 잘 부르고
So people they were so good at singing, so they were so touched.
그 이제 정말 유럽을 다 휘어잡았어.
So they got hold of the whole Europe.
오인도 목사가
Pastor Woyongdo,
오영진 장로 그 집에는 재밌는 게
what is good is
우리 누님이 큰 누님 둘째는 큰 누님은 아들만 셋나고 작은 누님 딸만 셋나.
this brother had older sister had three sons, and his younger sister had only three daughters. And so they are Oh Young-shin, Oh Young-jin, Oh Young-do. So there are three brothers.
오인도 목사는 여기 런던에
So Oh Young-shin, Oh Young-do is in England, but he became the chairman of the Christian community in England.
좀 나갔는데 기독교 회장 연합회에서 오인도 목사 회장을 난 영어도 서투르고 안 되다. 영어 그만하면 된다 해라. 그래 회장이
And he thought he was not good at English, so he couldn't be the chairman. But they told him, no, it's okay. You could be the chairman. So they told him it's okay. So he became the chairman.
줌으로
So in Zoom,
4시간 말씀 복음을
so for 2 weeks, for 2 days, for 4 hours, I preached the gospel. They were so surprised when they heard the gospel.
하나님이랑 너무 신기하.
It was so clear to see God working there.
여러분 저는 아무것도 아닌 사람인데
I'm nothing.
IYF를 했을 때
But when we started IYF,
진짜 웃기는 것이
what is amazing is, in 2007, in Chinese Youth League in China, the person in charge came to me
와서
and said,
중국의 청소년 강의를 좀 해달라고
why don't you do some lectures for us for the Chinese people in for the
2009년에
Chinese youth.
그러면
But I
다시
had no,
한번
but I didn't have enough time to go there back then in 2007, so I couldn't go there. But they invited me again in 2009, so I went there in 2009, and I was invited and I went there.
12월달 추워서
It was in the month of
한
December.
겨울에도 막 성질상 오바 같은 거 아니고
So usually I don't wear like thick coats, and even in the winter time, because I'm very impatient.
중국 가서 추워서
But for the first time, because it was so cold back then, so for the first time I put the coat, but I just wore it once. But I still have it in my house, but I didn't wear it since then.
어디 있는지 모르겠어요.
I don't know where I kept it.
중국에 가서 공산청년단 간부들 그리고 있는 사람들 앞에서 이틀 동안 강의를
So for 2 days I gave sermon,
신이 났어요.
but I was so happy. It was so interesting
청소년 장래에 대해서
for the future of the youth, Chinese youth.
전 막 그때 중국에서 난생 처음으로 그런 대접받았죠.
So it was my first time being treated like that in China.
이광보 형제가 중국
Brother Iwangbo, he was in China,
야, 이광보 이제 중국 요리 좋다. 중국 요리 한번 사 먹자.
and I told him, why don't we buy Chinese dishes? Don't you have some nice Chinese dishes?
요리 식당 메뉴표에 300가지 요리가 있는데
And there were 300 different dishes in a restaurant, but we didn't know what to order.
그 형들한테 시켰는데 보니까 누른밥 물이 식사.
And we ordered, and it was like just rice in soup. So we ordered, duck meat. So we ate it together.
오늘은 북경 요리입니다.
So when I was invited by Chinese Youth League, they gave me a big hotel in China, and I went there. And each time they served me with good meal.
좋아하거든요. 그래서
So I love eating.
I like eating 거 하나 보면
All that I know in English is I like eating.
오늘은 4천 요리입니다.
Today it's
5천 요리 가져마.
just bring me any Chinese dishes. I really adored the food there.
그때 중국 정부에서 중국 청소년 전부 다 박옥순 목사에게 아이와 받기로 결정했어요.
So they all decided to commit Chinese Youth League in our education, but in the security bureau they canceled it because we work in the religious domain. But before then we already had planned to do the Christmas cantata in the Beijing, but they canceled it, so we couldn't do it more. But
그 이듬해
the following year, 2010, one publishing house in China, they contacted me and said, "You are the one who gave lecture in Chinese Youth League. It was so nice, we heard. So we want to publish your lectures in a book, but the content of the lecture that you gave is not too big. So can you add some other stories to it so that we could make a book?"
몇건 팔 수 있는 게 5천만 건 팔아준다.
So they said they were gonna sell 50 million copies because there are 1.5 million a billion people in China.
5천만 계산 잘 보니까 돈이 많이 나.
And it seemed like we were gonna make a lot of benefits, and I thought I was gonna like become rich, but
10원도 못.
I couldn't even make a penny
북한이 마음이 그
because they made a many pirate version. Because in China is a very amazing country, right?
내 책하고 해적반
In the pirate version, they had exact same copy, but the price was half the price of my book. So people were buying the pirate copy. So I couldn't make a penny. So I lost all the money.
중국 보내기 전에 한국에서 출판해.
But before sending the copy to Chinese publishing house, we published it here in Korea as well. The title of the book was "Who is you that is dragging me?" It was very famous in China.
뭘 하든지 하나님이
So no matter what we do,
예수님과 성도자
as we work with Jesus, hands in hands,
내가 심장이 아팠을 때
when my heart was not good,
우리 합창 단장이 크리스마스 칸타타
this time we had Christmas cantata
세종문화회관에
in Sejong
SO에서
KBS Hall.
9회
They did it 9 times.
이런 새끼 몸이 안 좋아.
And early morning, starting from early morning till late at night, they did the performing and practice. But the conductor, She did it. She did it for a long time, but she was not feeling quite well, and she went to the hospital for diagnosis. But she was not feeling well. We prayed for it, and also Elder Hwang treated her. It could have been worse, but the conductress, chief of the orchestra, she said she wanted to go to the States. I told her, isn't it better to stay here? Told her, but she said no. I want to go to the States. But by the grace of God, she was totally healed.
저 미국 갔다 오면서
And
완전히
on her way back to the States,
처음으로
uh, she was feeling okay.
고맙다.
So for the first time, to my son and to my daughter, I told them, I'm so thankful that you guys took good care of her when she came to the States. And when I see her, I'm so thankful that God is working.
하나님께서
God
우리들 속에서 일하고
is working in us. So when I see God working in us, I'm so thankful.
이제 여러분 우리가 지난
So now, everyone, as we were doing the Easter service, 6 million people, they heard the sermon.
선교에서는 코로나 때문에 줌 설교가
Because of the coronavirus,
계속 줌 듣고
they listen to Zoom again.
그 다음 주 이제 5월 10일부터인가 제 집회가 나.
From 10th of May,
세계가
they will be having the online Bible seminar worldwide. What we're developing now in our mission.
어째 봅니까? 휴대폰 하나만 가지고
With one cell phone,
어느 나라에서든지 간에
whatever you may be,
설교
you'll be able to listen to the sermon of Pastor Oksu Park.
영어도 듣고 에스파뇰
Whether it's in English, in Spanish, or in Korean, or Chinese, whatever language that may be,
프렌치로
in French.
그거 지켜라.
So that's what we're going to develop shortly. And we're going to lead the whole world into salvation. And in South America,
수많은
for
목사
example, many pastors, they listen to my sermon each time.
이번에 미국의 CLF 한 3천 명 정도의 목회자들이 큰 교회 목사들 올라와요.
There's many big pastors wanted to join for CLF,
CLF 시작 4일 전인가
but about 4 weeks before, the governor of governor of New York, he banned any meeting more than 250 people.
인터넷 줌으로 나가니까 그럼 대부분 다 와서 들으면서
And as they heard the word,
계속 길을 열.
God opened the way for them to listen to the gospel, like this.
제가 CLF 하면서
And as we were doing this CLF,
같은 인간의 생각이 이런
such a person like me, how can I do this kind of work?
이번에 유럽에 캠프를 하면서
As we were doing this kind of work in Europe,
거기서 유럽의 그 목사님들이 한그 인사 막 구원받 간증도 다
when you listen to the testimonies of all the pastors, they shared the testimonies with me. I was so thankful about the testimonies.
뜨거운 그들 진짜 유럽에 이런 복음이 들어와야
So, yeah, this is the gospel that they need in Europe, they said.
다 열려버려.
So God opened the way totally for us.
이디오피아 한 목사님은
One pastor in Ethiopia,
우리 선교사 보고 자기는 이달이라고 계속 막았는데
he blocked us saying one pastor in Ethiopia, he blocked us saying we are called, but they later realized that this is the truth and they changed their mind.
하나님은 이 복음 전할
So God is happy with us preaching this gospel.
다른 거 다니고 이 복음.
So I don't do anything else, but all that I do is preaching this gospel.
IYF를 해도
Whenever we do IYF, no matter what we do, whether we do CLF,
굿뉴스 코어를 해도
whether we do Good News Corps,
찬양을 해도
whether we do the choir.
합창단 시작될 때 굉장히 난 염려됐고
When we started this choir, I was a little worried.
피아노 트리오 피아노 다음에 첼로 바이올린 이 셋의 마음이 안
There was a piano trio,
맞는다.
and their hearts did not go in along, so they broke apart.
합창단 수십 명들 어떻게 내가 다스려?
So how could I be able to lead hundreds of people in choir? So I didn't have any confidence in me.
그래서 너 다음에 그다음 무슨 생각하냐면
So what I thought about was,
합창 부를 때마다
so this choir, each time they sing,
주님 이 합창을
if they preach the gospel, God will help them, surely.
항상 합창하고 말씀을
So each time we got together, we had meeting for them.
한 번은
One day,
말씀 전했는데
I was
하나님이
preaching the word and I talked about God, and they said
저녁에는
this is religious meeting. So they said I shouldn't do it in the
하나님만
night.
들으면 다 종교 집회냐?
Now, if you just mention the name God, is it a religious like program? No. You know, when we have like when we sing national anthem, we have the title, we have the word God in it.
어떨 때는
So I preached.
메시지보다 어떤 거
Sometime when I preached, they would stop me. So there were all these difficulties.
모니터 끄기도 하고
And sometimes because they cannot stop the sound, so they'll stop the monitor.
말씀 전하기가 힘들어. 미국 시민들이 한국에는 말세지를 한 10분 전에 막 웅성웅성 하는데 30분 말씀 전 미국 시민 다 좋아.
In Korea, if you preach like for 10-20 minutes, they'll be they'll be like talking to another talking, whispering. But in the United States, even if you preach 30 minutes for 30 minutes, they'll be so happy to listen to the word.
에스파뇰 미국 10만 권을
So last time we donated 100,000 copy of our book, and
제3책 10만 권 기증했는데 미국은 진짜 신나게 참석한 15만 명인데 5만 권이 모자 어떡하나 했는데
so they ran out of, actually there were so many people participating, so they ran out of 50 copies. But there are certain people who were saying, "Oh, we are four in our family. We have four people, but we can just take one. We can share the book." And certain couple they were saying, "We are two, but we're just gonna take one. We can share it between one another." So with 100,000 copies, they could get everyone who came for the Christmas cantata. And since then, there are many people buying the books, so we send more copies.
장사 잘하는 편이죠.
So they're pretty good at
진짜요.
business, I guess.
하나님은
So God,
하나님은
God,
이 복음을 전하는 걸 기뻐.
God is happy to see this gospel being preached.
난 그걸 알아요.
That's what I know.
그 내가 망할 수 있고 잘못된
So I may fail in doing some certain things.
복음만 전해.
So, but all that I do is to preach this gospel.
모르는 사람들을 저를 흥행했다.
Yes, some people they accuse me of saying I seized, detoured money. But try to find it.
나한테 횡령 당한 사람이 고발하지.
If there's the one whose money is stolen, maybe he would bring a charge against me. But who is there anyone who lost the money from me? Nobody.
이길 수 있을 때
So I can see how God let me overcome everything.
정말 제가 무죄가 됐을 때
When I became when I was declared to be not guilty, it was so clear and obvious that God is with us. God protect us. I was very thankful about it, and I couldn't help but to praise God.
그냥 우리 교회가
In our church,
있어야 할 이유가 있습니다.
there is a reason why our church has to survive.
오직 성령이 너희에게 마시면 너희가 권능을 받고 예루살렘과 온 유대와 땅과 얘기했죠. 아프리카 한
But ye shall receive power after that the Holy Ghost is come upon you, and ye shall be witness unto me both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. Act 1 verse 8.
금방 변하더니 고향에 가 교장을 만나 주지도 않고 그냥 뭐 내가 이야기하려는 거 뭐 얘기하라고 했다. 할수 없고 사과. 장인이 월식 국밥 장사하시는데
And there's a brother who went out from the church, and he went to see his parents-in-law's house, and the parents-in-law let him open a soup rice restaurant, but it did not work as the business did not went well as he thought.
딴 목표가 있어.
And later he came back, but some other pastors had already taken up the church that he used to be.
안경점을 한국 사람이 하나도 도저히 안 돼가 나가는데 그 인수받아 돈도 못 내고요 팔아야 하더라고 안 되니 그냥 주고 갔다가 똑같은 복음 전도자인데
They were same gospel preachers,
훨씬 후배인데
and the one who went there, the church where he used to be, he became pastor a lot later.
너무 삶이
But we could see clearly that God was working when he preached the gospel.
주 차이 가는 그 아주 이상한 맛 나는 음식.
And in China, people like this vegetable called 향차이, and this smells very special. They have their special smell.
외국산 좋아하지
And
않지만
Koreans, they like kimchi, but foreigners, they don't like kimchi. But once they find out the taste of kimchi, they will love the kimchi.
맛들이라면 그것만 먹는다 그러더라고요.
Just like that, who find out the true taste of that herb, people they
그것만
love it.
먹으면
Even the gospel as well. If you get the taste of the kimchi,
모든 게 다 풀려요.
you know, no, when you preach the gospel, you will see how everything changes, everything works out.
내가 무슨 뭐할 때 복음 전다 가서 국밥 장사하고 앉아.
So that made me laugh. What does he have anything to do that he opened the soup rice restaurant? He has nothing to do. He was a gospel preacher. Why does he do that?
복음을 전하다가
He was preaching this precious gospel, and how could he start this
우리 형이 하면서
soup rice
매일 아침 밥을
restaurant?
하면서도 틈만에 복음 전하려고 하는데
And all our brothers and sisters, they want to preach the gospel anytime they are able. So that was so pitiful. The way Satan was deceiving them.
여러분 하나님께서
Everyone, God,
우리가 지금 복음을 위해 살도록
God, let us preach this gospel.
우리 형제들 다른 꼭 복음 전도자 아닌 형제들도 복음을 위해 사는 거 보면
When I see our brothers and sisters preaching this gospel, I'm so thankful.
양성우 장로라고.
And we have an elder named Cha Yang Sung-woo,
그 자매는 간호사고
and
좋은 회사
the other was working in a good company. His wife was a nurse.
어느 날
One day, the brother
박영 목사 찾아와서
came to see Pastor Youngkook Park and said,
나 미국에 와서
Pastor Youngkook Park,
우리 사는 간호사 월급 많이 받고 저도 월급 많이
ever since we came to the States, my wife is nurse and I'm working in a good company. We made a lot of money, but that's not fun at all.
교회에서 일하게 해주십시오.
But let us work in the church.
그럼
So I told him, okay, go ahead.
양성우 장로 교회 버스
So the other Yang Sung-woo, he's now driving the bus of the church. And the sister is now working in the kitchen of the church.
너무 행복해.
And they're so happy.
정말 내가 가면 그 자매 대전서서 이렇게 우리 식사하러 와서 좀 자매가 뒷받침하고 하는데
Whenever I go there, sometimes she comes to the place where we eat and she helps us eat. And I'm so thankful to see them do that. When Jesus shed his blood on the cross, and now so we live for Jesus.
예수 우리 마음속에 자주
Then many times in our hearts,
베드로 갈릴리 바다 고기 잡으러 갔는데
Peter, he went to catch fishes, but Jesus went to them and prepared the bread
요한의 아들 시몬아
and had fellowship with Peter and said, Peter, son of Simon, do you love me? He said, you know that I love you, Lord. Feed my lambs.
그리고 오늘
And today, in the book of Acts,
갈릴리 바다에 고기 잡으러 갔더니 어떡할 뻔했어요.
what would have happened? He went to catch fishes in the sea. Because now here you can see thousands of people receiving salvation. The lame sitting in the temple gate, he received salvation. He's doing this wonderful work. I was so thankful before God.
그래서 오늘 아침
Today,
설교 제목은
the title of today's sermon is Peter of our church.
모두 우리 교회.
Yes, we are all Peters of our church.
여러분 고기 잡으러 가서 빨리 그물 칠 수.
Everyone, if you're out in the sea trying to catch fish, you let it go and come back, and let us all live for this gospel.
여러분
Everyone,
장사하는 분들 장사하세요.
if you're doing business, okay, you can do your business.
그러나 여러분 그 무엇보다도
But everyone, more than anything, let us lay our hearts in gospel.
만약 교회를
Many people, they're leading the churches, and they have many methods to lead a church.
교회에 다른 방법을
But other than the gospel, I've never used any other method than the gospel, but I did everything for the gospel. So then I could see God working and leading our lives and blessing us.
주님 문을 여시니까 부활.
And when God opened the way for us, so on the day of Easter Sunday, we could see many people receiving salvation.
연인은 600만
And
명이
total of 6 million people
전
heard the
세계가
sermon
달라져
worldwide, and the whole world is changing.
복음 위해서.
Let's live for the gospel.
그래서 조용히 주님 교제를 받으세요.
And let us, and also
내
receive the
생각 달려가지
fellowship from the
말고
Lord. Don't be dragged by your thoughts.
예수님께서 갈릴리 바닷가에 베드로를 찾아와서 하고 싶은
Just
이야기
like Jesus wanted to say something to Peter, who was in
오늘도
the
예수님을
river, in the
영원하고
Sea
하고
of
싶은
Galilee.
이야기들이
Today, when
많다는
Jesus
거예요.
meets you, you would like to talk about many things.
영원한 평생
So listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit,
예수와
and then leave with Jesus.
어저께는
The day before yesterday,
손녀가
my grandchildren,
이제 너무 예쁜 거예요.
my granddaughter, I had a face
내가 예쁘다.
video chat with my daughter and my granddaughter, and we had a picture
복음 위해서 하는
because as we leave for the gospel, my son, my grandchildren, my granddaughter, my grandsons.
내가 나를 지키는 게 아니라
Instead of me trying to protect myself, but Jesus protecting ourselves,
우리
they're not
아들
comparable.
날 키우는 것하고 주님의 아들
Instead of
비교가
I taking care of my children and God taking care of my children, they're not comparable. I taking care of my grandchildren, God taking care of my grandchildren, they're not comparable. So we live for God,
주님이 여러분의 자녀들
and God takes care of your children and you and your future. Let God take care of everything, then you'll be so much blessed.
잠시 동안 기도하는 시간.
We have prayer time. We'll have personal prayer time.